All right, I'm gonna say let's get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Boston Region MPO Congestion Management Process Committee meeting. So you are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. And to read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostonmpo.org, MPO_non_discrimination. So we'll start with introductions. I'm Jay Monty. I'm Director of Transportation for the City of Everett and the Chair of the CMP Committee. And folks want to raise their hand. Aaron, or I can walk through the list, I guess that's easy enough. So Aaron McGuire.
Good morning, Aaron McGuire with the Boston Region MPO.
Seth Asante.
Good morning, Seth Asante with the Boston Region MPO.
Leonard Diggins.
Leonard Diggins, Advisory Council. Thank you.
Actually, could MPO members just raise their hands so I call on you folks first, and then we'll go to guests in the room.
I don't think we can raise.
Oh, really?
I can't raise. I don't see
Oh. Under reactions on the bottom.
I just
it.
raised
Oh,
my hand.
under reaction. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. All right, Steve Olnoff.
Yeah, Steve Olnoff representing the Trick subregion.
Great, and Sarah.
You'd think this far in, I would know this. Hi, everybody. I'm a senior transportation planner at Massport.
Great. Is that it? We have no other MPO members.
John Romano's joining right now.
Okay. We'll come back to John. So let's see, Allison Simmons. Here.
Hi, I'm Allison Simmons with the Lower Mystic TMA and the Assembly Connect in Somerville.
And Annette, I called on you, right?
No, I'm Annette
yeah.
Dempster, Director of Policy and Planning at CTPS, staff to the Boston Region MPO.
Sorry, the list keeps changing up and it's not in order. Austin Smith. I'll come back to Austin. Derek Cravat.
Good morning, Derek Cravat with the MassDOT Office of Transportation Planning.
Eric Molinari.
We have a change.
Good morning, Eric Molinari, Transportation Planner with the City of Everett.
Gracia White.
Hi, good morning, Gracia with the City of Boston's new mobility team.
And John Romano.
John Romano here.
Rebecca Morgan.
Good morning, I'm Rebecca Morgan, the Director of Projects and Partnerships with the Boston Region MPO staff, Central Transportation Planning staff.
Great. Rick Parker.
Hi, I'm Rick Parker with the Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce and Chair of Burlington's Transportation Committee.
I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this. Schulier Larrabee.
Skylar Larrabee,
Skylar Larrabee, sorry.
Boston Society of Architects.
So Tom Ryan.
Good morning, I'm Tom Ryan from A Better City, or a business organization in downtown Boston.
Great. And Travis Pollock.
Good morning, Travis Pollock, Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Great. So I think that's everybody. Did I forget anybody?
My name is Ryan Hicks. I'm the manager of the congestion management process at the Boston Region MPO.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. All right, so first on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the December 2nd, 2021 CMP meeting. It's been quite a while. So I know there's probably only a couple of folks here who were in attendance at that meeting. But if anybody had a chance to take a look and has any comments or would like to make a motion to approve the minutes, please do so. Steve.
Yeah, so in your listing of who was attending, you had you have members and you have, well, 4 people listed as members and half of which are the Mass Dot, and then 4 other people listed as attendees. But all those attendees were members of the MPO. So why aren't they members? Or who's exactly a member at that time?
So I have the list from Ryan of who was a member at the time. Let me pull this up.
Yes, I'm bringing up the list now. I'm sorry. Just one
So
second.
I believe
Yeah,
at the time, yeah,
Other attendees, Steve Wellenoff, Daniel Amstead, so Jen Rowe and Sheila Page. Those are,
right.
all
Yeah.
MPO members.
Yes, they were MPO members, but they weren't members of the CMP committee or on the board for the CMP committee.
Okay, so yeah, I always wondered because I used to attend the CMP meetings, and I always wondered, was I an actual member of the committee or was I just attending? And I guess you're telling me I was just attending.
I believe you were a member of the committee when you were with RTAC. You're the representative of RTAC at one point.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Ryan, do we actually need to vote on this to approve it? I think we talked about this the other day that it doesn't need a quorum, but do we need a vote?
We don't. We could do a vote, but we don't need a quorum.
Okay. So
I
voting
move we
member,
approve the minutes. Well, I don't know. Am I a member now? So I can't make a motion?
so Ryan, I think the voting members we have today are myself and City of Boston is on the meeting, but I don't know who's representing. It's not Jim Gooley anymore, and Jen Rowe I don't think is here.
Hi folks. Yeah, so Jen Rowe forwarded me this. So I'm just kind of taking notes. I don't know if she will be joining us in future meetings, but I guess since she couldn't be here, she asked me to show up today. And this is Grecia speaking.
Yeah. And Ryan, we also have Amira Patterson in the waiting room. So she's having trouble getting in.
Okay. Aaron, can you let the person in?
Yeah, I'm actually not seeing her in the waiting room.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Yep. If you need help, can you make me co-host so I can let people in as well?
All right, so Ryan, who are voting members, I guess, today? Can you just clear that up real quick?
Okay, so the vote members are you, Jay Monty. There is a vote member from MassDOT. There is a vote member from RTAC, which will be Lynn Diggins, and there will be a vote member from the City of Boston if the City of Boston is in attendance. And then we have 2 new members, Sarah Lee from Massport and Amira Patterson from the MBTA Advisory Board.
Okay, great.
We have 2 open spots.
Great. Okay. So you folks that Ryan just mentioned, you can take votes today. And when I see your hand up, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, it's just a vote. I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Great. And John, same thing?
Yeah, you want me to make the motion to approve the minutes?
Sure, please do.
So I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting in December of 2021.
Great, thank you. And Leonard, do you want to second that?
Sure, I'll second it.
Great. So we'll call the roll. Ryan, do you want to call the roll, please?
Ryan, you mean? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Never mind. I'm sorry. I heard mine. Sorry.
Sure. RTAC.
Oh, yes.
Okay. MassDOT.
John Romano, yes.
Okay. City of Boston.
Yes, present.
Okay. City of Everett.
Yes.
Okay. And MBTA. Okay, not present. And then Massport.
I'm gonna abstain. I wasn't part of that meeting.
Okay, okay.
Great. All right. So moving on to the main event. So Seth and Ryan are going to present to us today on some roadway pricing workshop experiences that they're working on and have been working on. So Ryan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
Next slide.
Oh.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Seth Asante, and in today's workshop, Ryan and I will be presenting information on roadway pricing program for input from CMP committee members and also MPO board members. I will begin the presentation with a brief background on the study and then describe the roadway pricing programs that MPO staff identified. It will include the purpose, challenges, lessons to be learned, and consideration for incorporating pricing into the planning process. After the presentation, I will hand over to my teammate, Ryan Hicks, to lead the discussion session. The Boston Region MPO elected to fund the study during the federal fiscal year 2023. The objectives of the study are to identify the political, institutional, and technological challenges, including barriers and opportunities that arise from implementing roadway pricing strategies, so that they may be considered if a roadway pricing program is implemented in the Boston region in the future. Also, the objectives are to identify the MPO goals for roadway pricing and how to incorporate roadway pricing into the MPO planning process. Next slide, please. There are 5 tasks in the study. Task 1 is identify and select roadway pricing program, which is the focus of today's meeting. In task 2, staff will identify key personnel of candidate roadway pricing program to interview. In task 3, staff will work with the MPO board to identify the MPO goals for roadway pricing. And in task 4, staff will explore roadway pricing in the MPO planning process. We will document the study and present the results to the MPO board. Next slide. MPO staff have identified 13 roadway pricing programs in the United States that could be further reviewed as part of this study. This task is complete, and the location and information on those 13 programs are in the memo that were sent to you. MPO staff is looking to select 5 of the 13 programs for further evaluation and interview. And this is the subject of today's meeting. We are requesting input from the CMP committee members and MPO board members to help us select 5 programs for interviews. Next slide, please. Roadway pricing falls into 2 broad categories: road tolls and congestion pricing. Road tolls are a common way to generate revenue to pay for highway and bridge improvements. Road tolls do not vary by time of day and are not intended to reduce congestion. Congestion pricing set policies so that variable tolls are charged under congested conditions and lower prices under uncongested conditions. The various forms of congestion pricing include cordon pricing, which are variable tolls and paid by users to drive into designated areas, usually city centers or central business districts. Variable pricing tolling is a technique that is used monetary costs to shift demand to off-peak period and other travel modes to help reduce congestion. Express lanes are lanes adjacent to general purpose lanes to provide users the choice of a more reliable trip by paying a variable toll, higher charges under congested conditions and lower charges under uncongested conditions. Hot lanes are high occupancy vehicle lanes, HOV lanes, that also allow use of limited number of low occupancy vehicles that pay tolls. And targeted road user tolling are specific charges that charge vehicles such as trucks or transportation network providers, provider vehicles to enter a cordon area or use a segment of road. And parking and curb pricing incorporates strategies and incentives other than tolls to help reduce congestion. Next slide, please. These are the locations of the 13 roadway pricing programs that MPO staff identified. They are geographically distributed across the United States, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, Florida, Texas, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, California, and Washington State. Next slide, please. These are the 13 roadway pricing programs that staff have identified. And the table shows the program and their pricing methods. They include 2 cordon pricing program, 8 express lane pricing programs, 1 variable pricing, 1 hot lane pricing, and also 1 parking pricing. The Central Business District tolling program in the New York City is currently at environmental assessment stage. It will be the first full-scale cordon pricing in the United States if it is approved and implemented. It is expected to start in 2024. The Chicago Transportation Network provider congestion pricing is currently in operation since 2020. It's a cordon and targeted pricing program. In this program, only transportation network provider vehicles are subject to surcharges. Next is the express lane pricing. This is the dominant congestion pricing method in the United States. They are in several states, including those listed here. The first one started in California in 1995. Some of the express lanes were built through public-private partnerships, such as in Texas, Virginia, Colorado, and others. Others were also funded from propositions, such as in California. Several of the express lanes were also envisioned from long-range transportation plans, as in Texas, Virginia, California, Washington State, Florida, and Maryland. The New Jersey Turnpike is a variable pricing program. The New Jersey Turnpike was opened in 1951 and it started operating as a variable pricing in the year 2000 to reduce congestion and shift traffic to the off-peak period. In Minnesota, the Minnesota Department of Transportation operates and maintains several hot lanes in the Minneapolis and St. Paul area. The hot lanes are variable price during peak periods. And in the off-peak period, the hot lanes are free for all vehicles. And the last roadway pricing program is the Penn Quarter Chinatown Parking Program. This program was implemented in 2016 to connect parking availability with demand. The program helped reduce congestion in those neighborhoods and also help improve safety. Next slide, please. Roadway pricing are implemented for several purposes: reducing congestion or increasing person flow, improving quality of life, air quality, safety, and reliability of travel. They are also implemented to generate revenue for several objectives. Roadway pricing also supports economic growth through travel time savings and also making transportation choices available. Next slide, please. These are some of the uses of revenue generated from roadway pricing. They include funding transportation improvements, providing travel choices, preserving infrastructure, promoting transportation equity and sustainable transportation, and making share ride affordable in transportation equity neighborhood, as well as supporting public transit. Next slide, please. Tolling policies of the pricing program that staff identified include variable price tolls that can vary at set times and days by type of vehicles and also the level of congestion. Discounts are given in roadway pricing programs to address fairness, equity issues, and also air pollution. But the discounts also vary across the programs. Vehicles eligible to receive discounts or travel free in the roadway pricing programs were buses, carpools, van pools, zero emission vehicles, fuel efficient vehicles, disabled plates and disabled veterans, and motorcycles. Next slide, please. MPO staff identified several implementation challenges in the 13 programs that we identified. The common challenges are building interagency collaboration to facilitate development of the programs. Also building consensus among stakeholders to gain acceptance of the program, and addressing transportation equity and environmental justice impacts, and also communicating revenue use and distribution, and also program benefits to the public. Next slide, please. MPO staff also identified several lessons to be learned from the pricing programs. They include, but not limited to this, envisioning roadway pricing programs from MPO long-range transportation plans, as in Texas, Florida, Maryland, California, and California. Also using pricing to support plan goal areas, using regional modeling tools to evaluate wide range of managed lane options, as in Texas, Florida, and California. Building a network of informed decision makers and elected officials to provide consistent message about the goals, benefits to the public, and also engaging public and building acceptance for the program. And the final one is using innovative financial schemes, such as public-private partnership, concessions, propositions, and commissions to implement the pricing programs. Next slide, please. MPO staff also identified several planning activities that were performed as part of implementing roadway pricing programs. These are some of the planning considerations: how roadway pricing can support MPO goals, treating pricing as an integral part of regional transportation plan, incorporating innovative financing scheme into long-range transportation plans, and also using modeling tools to evaluate managed lane benefits and potential benefits that result from roadway pricing, and communicating this to the public. Next slide, please. These are the next steps for the Task 1 activities. Have a general discussion about the 13 pricing programs today, in the hope of selecting 5 programs to interview and evaluate. So MPO staff are requesting for input from the members of the CMP committee, MPO board members, to help us select the 5 programs to interview. Thank you for your attention, and I will now hand over to my teammate, Ryan Hicks, to facilitate the next session, which is discussion, questions, and answers.
Thank you, Seth. Excellent presentation, Seth. As Seth mentioned, we currently have 13 projects that we're considering to further evaluate to study roadway and congestion pricing, and we need to narrow them down to 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help facilitate a discussion of several questions that will allow us to gather more information to help staff narrow down these 13 projects down to 5. All right. Aaron, if you could go back to the purposes slide. I'd like to start with the first topic or first question. And the first question is, what would you like to achieve from the implementation of congestion pricing and other forms of roadway pricing in the Boston region, specifically in the Boston region. So I'm going to open up the floor for that question. And if anybody has any comments or suggestions, please speak up. Lynn?
Sure. What I want to see is the entire transportation network being used as a transit and freight network. I think that should be our predominant goal. And the more efficiently you move people and goods, the less it costs you to access and use the network. And I think with that as an underlying principle or guiding principle, we can fit all these other types of pricing into that and use them as in whatever way they most effectively help us achieve that goal. That's it. Thanks.
I agree with that. The main objective of the transportation network is to move goods and people. So
as efficiently as possible, with the efficiency being because that then tells you how to price things and how what the price point is over the course of a day, month, or day, week, month, even year. That's it. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, Lynn.
Sure.
Jay?
You're on
Jay,
mute.
you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Ryan. So of the examples you gave, there's some pretty big differences. You have, managed lanes on freeways. You have both, roads that are new construction and were eligible to be tolled. You have roads that were built pre-interstate highway bill, which were toll roads. And you've got the in-between, which are interstate roadways, which can't be tolled. Right? And then you've also got this other type of congestion pricing, which is like in New York, where there's going to be a boundary. People drive across that boundary. So they're all very different. And I think, one thing is really understanding what would even work in our region, because we've got a mix of all those kind of situations. We've got some older toll roads, there's some newer freeways. I don't think we're looking to build more lanes on 93 or on the Mass Pike. So I think a good understanding of, and I think you have it here, like the goals of the MPO, right, are certain types of projects and certain mobility goals, but understanding how congestion management could be applied in our region, because it's probably kind of a sticky scenario, right?
It is. Yep. And that's the reason why we want to provide examples of all the types of congestion pricing, because we're still figuring out what will be suitable for this region. And as Seth displayed, there's several different types that might be suitable. Maybe we could use a combination of different schemes for congestion pricing. So we're very early in this process here of information gathering and everything. So, I think Lynn has his hand up again.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a mix, and so you find out what has worked in certain situations, and what the municipalities use, how they successfully implemented what they did, especially the public input process, and the engagement with the electeds, and so yeah, we're not going to find one solution that's going to work for us. And if the overall goal is to move people and goods as efficiently as possible, we're going to use different methods for different roadways and even different parts of the region. So we definitely want to look at this as a regional plan, and what works in Boston, may not work in Arlington, because of the roadway network in Arlington, so yes, that's it.
Okay. Thank you again, Lynn. We're going to take one more for this question, because there's several other questions that we'd like to get to. So, John, you're muted.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask this or not, or to interject this, but I think we should learn from or look from these other projects how their method of congestion management affected people's so I'm trying to think of, like, if you're going to charge people to come in at different times of the day, if you're going to charge them to use an HOV lane or an express lane, how does it financially affect those who can't afford that? Right? So did it push everybody to the train, and how does that affect the train system? Like, and could our transit system handle if 10%, 20%, 50% of the roadway users shifted to transit because they can't afford the congestion management pricing that we put in place? So I think, like, we need to see how did they deal with that? Right? I think we need to look at that, because I kind of think I don't want to look at this just one-sided. I think in some way, everybody feels like if we do this, yes, it'll reduce the amount of traffic coming into town, but then what did those people do? And how did it affect them financially? And, not everybody can switch to, come into work at 11 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah, equity is one of the big components that we're looking at with this study. And this is actually one of the questions that we had coming up.
Oh, okay. That's why I said I wasn't sure if this was the right.
But I could give a brief summary of what we're looking at as well, and what other projects are doing as well. In certain instances, for example, I could use the city of Chicago cordon pricing scheme for the transportation demand networks, such as Uber and Lyft. What they do is you're charged if you go into a certain area of the city, right? There's a surcharge for your trip. And then that surcharge is actually used to help fund the CTA, which is the transit system in Chicago. And they operate the L and the buses and everything. And over a period of time, after a short period of time, they were able to bring in $15 million for the CTA just after implementing that surcharge for picking up in downtown Chicago and at airports and certain other locations. So, so we could discuss this a bit more once we get to that question. So I'm thinking we have about 18 minutes left, so maybe we could spend about 2 or 3 minutes on each of the other questions. Aaron, can you please go to the challenges slide? Thank you. The second question is, what do you expect would be the biggest challenges for implementing congestion pricing or other forms of roadway pricing in the Boston region? And EJ could be, and likely will be, one of those. What types of challenges do you foresee with implementing this? Lynn?
The biggest challenge always is building consensus, and determining, what level of buy-in is enough to move forward. Sometimes people interpret consensus as being everyone. You're not going to get everyone. I find generally if you have like a 2-to-1 ratio, you're good. But it's hard. It's hard to build consensus. And it's always the biggest challenge. I think the most important thing we need to do is communicate the benefits to the public. At all times, and so and that's about it. Those are the biggest challenges, the most important, of the challenges. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. John?
Yeah, so I agree with Len that's going to be the biggest, probably one of the biggest. The other one is I think physical space. because if we, depending on which way we're looking at, one of the biggest, especially, the city of Boston are trying to get into the city of Boston. There's not a lot of room. And as we're already taking lanes away for, bike lanes, bus lanes, right? There's not a lot of roadway space left to do. If you got a bike lane out there, you got a bus lane out there, you put an HOV lane there, and then there's no more regular lanes for anybody else to drive on. So there's not a lot of space to build extra lanes. So I just think real estate is going to be an issue for some types of the things that's set to looked at in some of the other areas, the other states that they're using. There's just not going to be enough room. So that's going to be a challenge, I think, or it's going to limit the options that we have.
Yep, agreed. Yep, these were the pricing strategies that we found throughout the nation, and some might not apply to our region, depending on the situation and what they entail. So, Jay?
Thanks, Ryan. And yeah, I agree on the consensus building piece. I think that is far above probably the hardest piece, but I think there's something missing here, and that is the legislative aspect, right? Because I think to do most of this, it would require some form of either state legislation, but also on the local level. I think one of the differences, I see John's point about kind of physical space on the road, but there's also the other way of doing this, which is you draw a circle around downtown Boston. You say you come in at the circle, you come out of the circle, you pay a fee, right? Which is how the New York and the London system works. But the difference here, obviously, is you have a dozen or so municipalities that circle might go through, right? And so, how do you coordinate from a legislative aspect? And it's about getting buy-in, but also making do individual cities and towns have to pass this through their legislative bodies? Does the state have to do so? Do we have to go to the Federal Highway Administration? So I think there's a lot of kind of legal and legislative pieces here that are going to be a challenge too.
Absolutely. Sarah will be the last commenter for this topic.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to raise a couple of things. I think something that hasn't been mentioned is that if you are trying to get people to think about the mode of travel that they're taking and have them consider alternative modes, they need to be reliable and they need to be high quality. And I think it would require a lot of work in the Boston region for that to be the case, or at least to have people have confidence that there's reliable and high quality alternatives. And the other thing is that I'll mention, and obviously there's lots of different things we're talking about, but if we're talking about tolling downtown or having a scenario that includes that, I know I keep reading about downtown being decimated by COVID and the businesses having a really tough time there. So I think the whole concept of businesses would need to be considered, especially with the timing emerging from COVID and knowing there's been a substantial amount of impacts there.
Absolutely. Excellent comment. Just similar to the conversation, we have to be concerned about businesses, especially small businesses as well in these areas. All right. We need to move on to the next topic. Aaron, if you could please go to the revenue. Thank you. So what will be your priorities for using revenue obtained with roadway pricing if roadway pricing was implemented in the Boston region? Any suggestions, comments? Sarah?
Yeah, just to follow up on my earlier point, creating those high quality and reliable alternatives, including transit, bicycle, and those types of modes.
Yep. Jay?
I agree, understood, Sarah. And I think if you look at the London example, that was exactly what they did, right? The day that started, they had hundreds of buses that went into service to add to the transit capacity of the system and absorb to the folks that decided to no longer drive. So that's certainly a challenge too. But yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jay. We'll do Lynn, then John, and then we'll move on to the next one. Lynn?
Yeah, I mean, they're all important, and if you have to rank, the system has to work. Meaning by that, it has to be made, you have to maintain the infrastructure. I know it's not sexy, but if you don't have that, you don't have a network and nothing works. So you have to rank that first. And the funding transportation improvements by travel choices is kind of like a superset. Of some of the other elements. So I would rank that one second because I get some of the others included in that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. John?
Thanks, Ryan. So I agree with Sarah J and Len, but I think that just pouring money into public transit, there's always the fear that all that money is just replacing other money that's already there, and that I think having specific new items like what Jay said, like having new buses as an example from one of the other cities. So if there's specific new elements to the alternatives for people that might not be able to drive in or that we're trying to displace, take out of their cars, right? But the new money has to provide new elements of the alternatives, not just putting the money into the existing, because it'll just replace the money that's already there. And we could say it don't, but it does.
Excellent comment. An example of that will say maybe this project will go to fund a new rail line that goes through a certain area that that will help benefit the burdened populations in the Boston region, for example.
Ryan, if I could just add one small comment, right? So just as I'm involved in a couple of small nonprofits, and right, this is just when you say specifically to somebody, your $50 will buy a dozen baseballs. People are willing to, they can see that what their money exactly goes to, and they're more willing to give. So this is on a much bigger scale, but this $10 million will pay exactly for this new thing. People are more willing to support it.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes things like that have to happen to get buy-in, both politically and publicly. So
yeah. Thank you.
All right. Aaron, can you go to the list of congestion pricing projects? Thank you. So here are the example of the 13 projects that we're considering to evaluate and interview people for. Are there any additional congestion pricing projects that are not on this list that you know about, either in the country or even in the world? They could be as big or as small of a scale as possible. Even something in your local community might be related to one of these roadway pricing schemes as well. So feel free to speak up on this one. Sarah?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know the details of the London program, but I know that the mode shift has been significant. So I feel like it's been productive in whatever their goals were. I know obviously that's not New England, but it might be helpful to at least have some background information on their goals and how they got to where they are now.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Lynn?
Yeah, I didn't see this question coming. So I mean the notion of us suggesting other projects out there. So I'm happy to put some effort into looking. When do you need to know?
As soon as possible. We would like to select these projects definitely in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I'll put some effort into it. Yeah, I'm interested in the Texas one because they had to deal with folks thinking, that this was double taxation, and so it'd be interesting seeing how they dealt with that. And I like the one that did the variable parking because they indicated that there were no challenges to that one. I think that would be interesting here. But what I am looking for, this kind of harkens back to something that was said earlier about the equity issue, is I'd like to see a model. This is what we look for, is one where people are able to they're given like a basic level access to the entire network. But anything beyond that basic level then costs them more. So if you want to access the network in a shared vehicle, and then maybe for the last 10 miles or whatever, and then access a public transit network, it might cost you X. But if you want to go from point A to point B in an SOV, an SUV, SOV on top of that, this is going to cost you 10x. So everyone gets basic access, but anything beyond that costs you. And then we just kind of modulate the cost of the various parts of the network, as we need, be it tolling, pricing by day or whatever. So that's what I'll be looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, we'll go Travis, then Jay, and then after that, we'll move to the next topic, because the next topic I really want to get to. Travis?
I just say I agree with the others. I think it'd be really interesting to look at all the different ones. Like here, you got variations, but I also want to say that I think Stockholm, if you're looking internationally, was one of the most successful as a regional. And I believe they used the money from the tolling to support the regional rail system, which provided another way for people to get around. And I think it's been quite successful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Travis. Jay?
So looking at this list again, it's very dominated by express lanes, and certainly that is one, method. But when I think of these projects, and these were, I think, done primarily to kind of improve the throughput or efficiency of the highway, and not necessarily done with an intent to shift modes, right? Like, I don't think Texas DOT's express lanes program was done with the intent to get people onto transit.
No.
Or Florida's, or really any of these, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's fine to have a couple of these in here, but I would maybe encourage you, and Travis mentioned Stockholm, I know I mentioned London, if we can find other examples that really take a more holistic look at mobility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how we're getting folks not out of cars, of course, on a transit bike, but really improving their mobility within the region, because I don't think that any of these express lane projects really had that intent. It was simply to make there be less traffic, right?
Right.
So yeah, that would be my words of encouragement there.
Okay. Yep. To wrap this section up, the closest one that would have had sort of a transit element and with mode switching would be the one in Baltimore, the Maryland Transit Authority Express Lanes program. There is a transit element. They're expanding it further down I-95 going north of Baltimore, and they are going to offer like a park and ride service and also express bus service in that area. But yes, you're right. Most of them were most of these were done in the 90s and early 2000s without other modes of transportation in mind. So let's move on to the next topic. We could just stay on this slide. And we kind of talked about this earlier. And this question deals with EJ. What do you think that congestion pricing and other forms of pricing can be implemented without adversely affecting EJ and low-income populations? Lynn?
Well, so that was kind of the basis of what I said before, and I realized that this question was coming. At this point, I thought I'd missed it. But yes, you give everyone a basic level of access, to the transportation network. It is a level on which they can thrive. And as I said, anything then above that, any other usage above that, that isn't efficient, or is much less efficient, then cost you more. And so now everyone feels that they are getting access to the network that they've paid for. You know, everyone has the right to, I mean, should feel that they paid for this network, you know, but it costs to maintain it, you know, costs to expand it, you know, and that cost will be the price, the money that we get to do that will come from those who use it less efficiently, beyond the increase that we just as a overall population have to pay for an increase in the cost of the system. But I'm getting a little, I'm losing my clarity on this, you know, but so I'm gonna stop. I hope you got the point that I made. You know, if not, I'll let someone speak and then come back. And did you get what I was getting at? Somewhat, at least. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I totally agree. So. Okay. Jay.
Yeah. Nice, Ryan. So I think, you know, for communities like Everett, Somerville, you know, inner core communities that have been, you know, impacted by the freeways, right, or the highways for the last 50 years. One of the things we always talk about is sort of what, you know, when traffic gets bad, or, you know, if there's tolls, like on Tobin Bridge, there's tolls, the behaviors that creates, or the incentive that creates, is for folks to get off the highway and then drive on local streets to kind of bypass the traffic, bypass the tolls. And so these communities sort of get hit twice, right? We get hit by the pollution and environmental effects of having the highway in the first place. Then we get hit again when folks sort of bypass that and then take, you know, local streets and congest our neighborhoods. So I think, you know, and kind of why I was not a huge fan of populating this list with so many express lane projects is that if these have the effects through tolling of pushing folks off of the highway and into communities, that's going to further burden, you know, the EJ community. And so I really think it's important, and I agree completely with Len. This is a holistic look at mobility, a holistic look at access, because if it's too focused on, you know, reducing congestion on a specific roadway, that impact is simply going to get pushed somewhere else, and presumably it's probably going to be onto an EJ community.
Absolutely. We'll do Sarah, and then we'll keep moving on. We're actually over time. However, we have the ability to stay on if you want to. There's a couple more questions, and we can definitely go through them if everybody's willing to. So, Sarah?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on Jay's point, which I think is, I'm really glad he raised it. That's also the situation with, I think, any of these, right? Jay, you've been to the MAPC offices, which are, you know, 20 feet from the end of the pedestrian zone in downtown Crossing. And that's the #1 pickup drop off for Ubers and Lyfts, which then muddles up the Silver Line route on that road as well. So, that's definitely something I think we need to think about across the board, that any type of thing we're doing where there's a financial incentive to go around it, people will make that choice, and that needs to be addressed in some way.
And that was one of the things that we're thinking about. Excellent comments on this entire section from everybody. But that's one of the things that we're looking at is, okay, if we do congestion pricing in certain locations of the region, where is this traffic going to go? And we don't want to double tax the burden communities with not only with a more expensive way to get to where they need to go, but also sending more congestion into their neighborhoods, which is that's definitely not the thing that we want to do with a project like this. So
can I make one more point, Ryan? One other thought that I had was with the new legislative action, which may or may not proceed, to identify basically the process for reduced fares for the MBTA. This is something that could potentially be looped into the same process in terms of identifying folks that would need breaks on pricing and have that under the same umbrella.
Yes. I mean, you're right about that. An ultimate strategy of, for example, with the parking pricing strategy, it might be behind the scenes or more legislative. Like, for example, starting an employer-based program where employers could register and get MBTA passes, for example, at a discount for the workers if they do not drive to work, for example. There are programs like that out there, and that is a form of congestion pricing as well. Going on to the next question, Erin, can you go to the lessons to be learned? Okay, and she has another meeting. Okay. Okay. All right. So this question thinks of what are we going to get out of congestion pricing and what we have learned so far from congestion pricing and the research that we have done. And this question is, which of these projects or aspects of these projects do you believe would be most relevant when considering congestion pricing or other pricing, roadway pricing for the Boston region? And some of you all have mentioned several examples, like, for example, maybe express lanes might not be suitable, but there might be other types of roadway pricing projects that might be more suitable for the region. So.
Is there a list we're supposed to be looking at? I thought I saw this one.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I think Aaron might even have to go to another meeting. So if need be, I could maybe bring it back up and share.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah.
Well, I will write you up the innovative financing, because it would take more than a couple of sentences that I'm apparently no longer able to produce, to get it out. But I'll write it up and send it to you. But I've been thinking about this a lot, and so I certainly have some thoughts about how to finance it and price it, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just give me a second. Okay. Are there any other comments on this one? Sorry, I just need a second to bring up the list.
See, Eric has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Oh, Eric.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to take a second and bring up the topic of kind of vehicle size as well, and the the adverse things that puts onto our transportation system as well. And I wonder if there's kind of anything that other cities have done within congestion prices, looking into either charging smaller vehicles less or larger vehicles more, and kind of how that works to incentivize folks that maybe drive larger vehicles to maybe rethink bringing them into our small congested city that we have here. And how that affects not only traffic because they take up more space, but parking as well, and how it can limit that as well. So I just kind of wanted to bring up that point.
Excellent.
Yes. I like that point because along with small, like these smart vehicles, which occupy like a bike lane, have a very small footprint and a light wear on the road. If they're shared, and rechargeable, electric, chargeable, I think people get to pay very little to access the network when they use those.
Okay. Can everybody see the lessons to be learned slide? Yeah. Okay, just making sure. Okay, Jay?
So it's an interesting point that Eric and Lynn brought up about vehicle size. I guess even still currently, to a certain extent, fuel tax does impact larger vehicles more than smaller vehicles. Maybe not enough, but it does have that effect to some extent. But as we move towards electric vehicles, and even if we move to a vehicle miles traveled system, that actually goes away because you're then basing on miles traveled, not on energy consumed necessarily. And so you really, I think, could consider that as part of a congestion management tool, because we're going to be losing it elsewhere in the system.
Are there any more comments? After this, we have one more question.
Ryan, can you repeat the question for lessons to be learned?
Sure. Which of the projects or which aspects of these projects do you believe would be most relevant when considering congestion pricing or other types of roadway pricing for the Boston region? Amara?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So just to chime in, I think that everyone's been having great feedback. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I haven't wanted to double chime in. But I think that it's important that we note the communicating program goals and benefits to the people that we serve. We want to benefit the T and the cities and towns that actually do receive service. So we just want to stay on the goal of being equitable, holistic, and communicating, because if they can't get behind it, it's not going to work. So yeah, that's my comment.
Thank you. All right. I think now we can move on to the last question. Or Steve, we have a little bit of time now.
Yeah.
Steve,
I was just looking at the New Jersey one, and that seems to be the closest to what we have in Massachusetts with the turnpike. And so I thought that would be a relevant one to look, because and their state not too dissimilar from Massachusetts and what we have here. So I think that should be selected as one of the ones to look at.
Okay. Yeah, I think the main difference between the New Jersey Turnpike and the Massachusetts Turnpike is that they have variable rate pricing with Easy Pass users, where they actually give a discount or a decrease in price during off peak, and then they increase the price during peak period for Easy Pass drive users, where it's a fixed rate on the Mass Pike.
Yeah, so that's the only so that's what makes it a good comparison.
Right, absolutely. So yeah, those are the main difference between the two, is the pricing schemes. Okay. All right, moving on to the last question. And I'll go to the maps. All right, so as you can see on your screen, these are the locations of the 13 congestion pricing projects that we were able to gather information about. My open-ended question to everyone is, we need help, as far as finding contacts for these 13 projects, because we need to meet with stakeholders, get them on the phone, interview them, find out what their lessons learned was from implementing these projects, what the challenges were, and what the purposes were of these projects. So I was wondering, if you have any information, can you refer us to anyone who might be able to provide more information about any of these projects, if you have any contacts, that sort of thing. So. And I know it's nationwide, so that might not be the case, but I was just going to ask that just in case.
I know that who's the guy from T for Mass, or formerly from T for Mass? Chris Dempsey has done, I believe, a lot of research on congestion pricing. He might be
okay.
A great resource to try to think about the synergies between other projects that have happened across the country and the world, and possible overlap with what could happen in the Boston region.
Okay, that's a familiar name for the Boston region. Steve?
And so I don't have any names of people, but I came more or less prepared to say which ones I would think you should choose to look at for this and why. So I'll just point out, when I'm looking at the San Francisco project, they're the only ones that really raise the facts that it said environmental groups raise concerns about the hub network is contributing to more travel and emissions. And I thought that was a surprising kind of viewpoint. So I thought maybe they should be wanting to speak to more and find out what that was all about and whether that really happened or not, was justified.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. And based on your comment, it brings up a really good point, and maybe we should just go ahead and ask it. And this won't guarantee that these projects will be selected, but are there any projects that you feel should be selected or shouldn't be selected for further study? Lynn?
Yeah, so I like what Steve said. I mean, I was certainly thinking about the Chicago TNP, process. And I think that one's worth exploring. Even though the New York, Corden, pricing probably wouldn't be something that we would adopt here. Especially given what Sarah said. I understand the concerns about the businesses in the CBD, but I think it's worth exploring. And so be that one in Chicago, the San Francisco one, the Texas one, for the reasons I said earlier about the notion of people paying twice for the system, and then I think it was the Minnesota one, the one that did the variable parking. So
that was Washington, D.C.
I'm sorry, Washington, D.C. Sorry, so those would be my 5. And I'll be thankful if I get just one.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Jay?
So I actually think we ought to keep New York in the running. I understand the point, and that the coordinating is difficult, and I even kind of made that point. But I think it's a worthy example. I'm interested by the Washington D.C. parking one, actually, because I think that's if you look at kind of proven methods to reduce vehicle travel, even in Boston, where we've had parking caps, in the city and at the airport, that have been fairly effective. So I think that's one worth keeping. I actually really appreciate Steve's point on San Francisco, because it wasn't something I was aware of, but worth looking into. I would maybe say if any of these projects required or included building new highway miles, that I don't think those are really the best projects to be comparing to the Boston region. I don't think that's the direction that we're going in this region. So I would hate to have a report that said, oh, it worked great in Dallas. They built 40 miles of new freeway. Like, that's not really where we're trying to go here. So I would just, maybe those fall to the bottom. So thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Steve?
Yeah, so the ones I wanted would be Chicago, San Francisco, and Washington. And then New Jersey I mentioned. Well, that would be a good one. And then the parking in Washington, because that's the only one really that they had to do with the parking. So those would be the 5 I'd want.
There are 2 Chicagos though, Steve. Which Chicago?
Oh, should do Chicago's well, the first one, I guess.
There's only one Chicago.
Oh, really? I thought there's 2. I thought there was the TNC one.
There's Colorado.
Yeah,
that's the only one.
There's
Okay.
one in Denver. Yeah, there's express lanes in Denver, Colorado.
All right.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
Yeah, the Chicago one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on this question? And this last question I just decided to ask on the fly. So. All right. Are there any other general questions, general comments on any of these topics that we discussed? This was a very, very, very informative and very good discussion. So.
Well, good. I thought so too. So great.
Steve?
Yeah, so So, okay, just getting on to one thing before we end the meeting is, again, who are members of this committee? And can we get a list? And
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I know Jay was asking for more, and I mentioned that I
Yeah.
wasn't sure whether I was on or not. And
Mhm.
so could we, get more information on that?
Yes, there are currently 6 people on the committee. 2 people have recently joined, and there are 2 open spots. And one thing that we could possibly discuss is, especially since you've been with the committee for so long, at very least, we can maybe make you a non-voting member of the committee.
Well, that's sort of what I am now, I think.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
be more encouraging if I made a voting member.
Okay, I understand. So, and there are 2 open spots, so maybe we could discuss the possibility of filling those spots as well. So
Ryan, what are the next steps here? And
Yep.
great job, by the way. This is fantastic. I agree with great discussion, great work on your part.
thank you. Thank you for all your help too, Jay.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Steph, for your presentation. So.
But I think, everybody's really engaged here. I think from what I can tell, folks want to continue to be engaged on this. So we'll kind of, what are we going to check back if you've done some work? Are we going to have another opportunity to have another discussion? What are your thoughts?
Okay. Well, we kind of want to complete this study within the federal fiscal year, which ends September 30th. And we also have a limited budget. It's the budget for this project was only $45,000, and and we will have to do more outreach and everything with the stakeholders themselves, which is going to take a bit of the budget. So there might be a possibility that we could maybe do another one of these, but we can't guarantee that because it will take a bit of the budget for this project. But the immediate next steps would be staff is going to get together, take in all this input that you all have gave us, and we're going to narrow these projects that we're going to look at and analyze from 13 projects to 5 projects. And I think your comments will be very valuable for us selecting these 5 projects. And we might select a project or 2 that maybe did not go very well as far as implementation goes, because we want to see what the challenges are as well. So from there, we're going to select the projects, and then we're going to begin interviewing stakeholders. Those would be the next immediate steps. I'll say Seth or Rebecca, do you have anything to add? As far as
I wanted to mention that we're going to review the input that we have and get the 5 programs selected. And after the interview, we compile all that we learned and present to the MPO, because in tax 3, we have to identify the MPO goals for roadway pricing. And the information that we get from the interviews from all these programs, we're gonna assemble them and present them to the CMP committee and the MPO board members so that they can be prepped and use this information to help identify the MPO goals and objectives for roadway pricing.
Yeah, I was going to say we could use this forum again when we get to that point. So I think once we get the information from the various programs, come back, present that information and compare that to the MPO goals and think about that together. I think this is a good forum because we can dedicate an hour as opposed to something like 10 minutes with the MPO board and then summarize that for the MPO board as a follow-up. I think that may be an approach, Jay, if that sounds appropriate to you.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think, I was like really impressed by the level of participation here. We haven't had this kind of participation at a CMP committee meeting as long as I've been here. So
yes,
I think let's take advantage of that and get folks, keep folks engaged.
All right, Seth, do you have your hands up or?
No.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right.
And then, one quick other note, Amira Patterson joined us a little late, so just want to make sure she's a new member. So just make sure that she's noted as being in attendance.
Okay, yeah, I have it written down and everything, so, yep. So, all right. All right, so a few more things, and I guess we can even go to the other business slide and wrap up. Oh. Yeah, so with the other topic of committee membership, I'm thinking, yeah, we still have 2 open seats. So we probably as staff, and then we probably need to discuss with Jay and maybe other NPO members of how to fill those seats.
Is there any reason why Steve couldn't become a voting member? Like, was there something?
That is a possibility, I believe. Yeah.
If he volunteers like anybody else, he can just be on.
What'd you say? Sorry.
So, I mean, we've had 2 other new members, Sarah and Amira, who generously volunteered, and it sounds like Steve is as well. Is there anything standing in the way of Steve just becoming a member, right? Right now?
Yeah, not on my end, definitely not. And I think I think it is possible as long as he's a member of the NPO. So I think that's the only thing. So if
yeah, so I'm the alternate. I'm the alternate Trick, which means simply is you appoint Trick, and between Tom O'Rourke and me, I'll be the one that will be coming. That's
okay.
all.
If that's the case, I'm perfectly fine with it. Steve has been attending these meetings for over 11 years now, since I've been here, and he's been very informative and has provided a lot of input over the years on various projects related to congestion pricing, congestion management. So yep. Me personally, I'll be happy to have him on the committee. So. Yeah, so if that's the case, then we'll just have only one more space to fill.
Right.
Yeah, and then maybe we could have a meeting, another CMP committee meeting, because I would like to start meeting more frequently. So maybe we could meet in the next month or maybe next couple months, that sort of thing. And now that we are at least for the time being that we're meeting virtually, is everyone okay with meeting on alternate dates by any chance, or days of the week, for example, like maybe on a Tuesday instead of a Thursday? Or
it seems like this time worked pretty well. 9 a.m. on a Thursday.
Okay.
Better attendance we usually get, so I'll
as long as we don't end up with like 3 NPO meetings, on a day, that'd be good, because I have to work. So
I understand.
Yeah, so it's just like it takes up the whole day. All right, thanks.
Yeah, because this meeting was originally going to be scheduled for the 30th, but we didn't want to have 3 NPO committees on the same day. So yeah, so I totally understand that. So yeah, for now we could definitely keep it to Thursdays. So, and then Thursdays at 9 o'clock. It seems like it works well for a lot of people. This was the highest attended meeting I think we've ever had. So, and
I think it says too, Brian, on these sorts of in-depth topics, it really does get folks interested. So I know often in the past we could have met more just to make sure the index data is up to date and that that sort of stuff. But if we've got other projects that folks can really delve into like this, I think it's a great forum.
Okay.
Maybe plan for a longer meeting so that people can block out that amount of time. Because 60 minutes is kind of hard to do anything. I mean, 75 is often a nice little split between 60 and 90.
Okay. Yep, and I could work on that as well. It might be tough having them at 9 o'clock then, especially if there's an NPO meeting.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
And I don't know if people would be willing to do 8:30 meetings or not. So
yeah, I hear you. I was just saying. So
yeah. So all right. Yeah, if there's not any other questions, comments about anything that we discussed today, we can wrap up.
Great. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Well,
One, yeah,
That was line, yeah.
yeah. Can I second it, Ryan?
Oh, second, sorry.
Yeah, okay. All right, I was gonna say, can I second it as a chair? I'm not sure if I can.
No, as a chair, no.
Yeah, yeah,
So- But sometimes Dave just says, sometimes Miller just says, you're done.
Yeah.
So, we're done.
Great. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
thank you,
Have a good
everybody.
one.